Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Josh here. So I wake up in the morning and I have these random thoughts about life. And today I woke up and started thinking about ancient man because I watched a show last night and I think it was the history of the Earth in 2 hours or something like that. And it was interesting, but mostly information that I'd already explored before, but I like to re-explore it because I always find something new. And it's not like we can really learn the history of the Earth because most of it is still in speculation mode, and a lot of the early Earth stories are based on um, fossil records as well as what we assume to be likely Earth history. I was thinking about the time of day and the circadian rhythms and the way that our bodies function in a 24-hour frame, and it got me thinking about how humans, say 50,000 years ago, we had started to create valid, useful tools that we could actually and we'd harness fire within I believe the scientists believe that we harnessed fire up to 200,000 years ago. And in our historical record, we tend to think that humans became advanced about 12,000 years ago. And fire is not by any means advanced for a culture, but it's a very useful aspect to creating a farming community and culture that can remain in one place for a long time and live in colder climates as well. Because once you've harnessed fire, you can spread anywhere. But I started thinking about all these different ideas of when ancient man existed and how we carbon date these people and how we carbon date these skeletons and bones that we find. And I like to dig deep into subjects to see exactly how much I can find out about it, to see really how valid the science is behind things. Because I don't just take science as gospel, so to speak. I have to go in and do the research and listen to the scientists themselves debate about it and see where their real evidence comes from. So this morning my search was about carbon dating. And of course I found some Christian explanations of it, which said that carbon dating is all bunk and that all skeletons are, 3,000 years old or 5,000 years old, that kind of thing, which to me is ludicrous. Then there's also the folks who say that it's perfectly accurate to date it back like 1.5 million years or whatnot. So anyway, I'm not a scientist. I'm definitely not involved in carbon dating, but I understand how it works to an extent. And it started getting me thinking about the cycles of the Earth and what our ancestors may have endured as far as different daytimes. Now, what really got me thinking about this was the earthquake that they had a few years back. The Malaysia one knocked the Earth out like a millisecond in its orbit. It changed the rotation of the Earth by a very small fraction. But the Earth has been changing rotation, and the Earth has been slowing down for millions of years. So what scientists are saying is that the days were once shorter. They say that 300 million years ago, they believe the days would be about 21, 22 hours per day, and that over time they changed. Which, if it was a consistent change, that would be testable, or I should say that would be researchable, but we don't know which earthquakes hit at what time, or which celestial events or planetary events could have caused the Earth to wobble slightly. We don't know if a comet hit that threw it completely into a different orbit. And the moon is tied into this pretty well. What it got me, I know there's a lot of ancient history. People are talking about trying to date certain events back farther by saying, no, this is when this eclipse would have happened, therefore these people must have existed, say, 20,000 years before we think they existed. And they've found that even the slightest difference in the Earth's rotation accounts for a complete difference in all celestial events, especially solar and lunar eclipses. So I guess that what that means to me is that it's very difficult for anyone to really gauge exactly what happened hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago, without having the wider picture, the bigger picture. And after reading a few forums and listening to scientists debate these things, I found that there's not even a consensus among the scientific community. Many people don't even believe that the early Earth was what we claim it to be, this hellish place. Cyanobacteria appeared relatively quickly after the Earth formed, and evolution began to take place. As for a matter of when and how things happen, it's very iffy. I believe in evolution, but I don't believe that our story of evolution is complete or correct by any means. So I believe that somewhere amongst all that information and knowledge and all these skeletons and old fossil records, we can start to understand where we came from and start to understand our ancestors, but never really get the full picture of the whole history of the Earth, or humanity for that matter. So as I was reading this, I found this article here, and I wanted to read the very last part of it. It's an overview on time standards based on Earth's rotation. And it's pretty long, but some of it's technical, so I'll just get to the end summary here. It says, when humanity finally gets to other planets, timing will also have to change. As Mars has a day that's almost 25 hours, this represents a shock to the 24-hour circadian rhythm of the human being. This fact was laid bare when the people on the Mars rover program forced the crew on Earth to live in 25-hour days instead of 24. In quick order, they suffered the equivalent of jet lag, and this ran for the extent of the program. It will take generations of people living on Mars to adapt to the new rotational time. As we have, as a species entirely on Earth, with the rare exception, we are firmly ensconced to the natural time of Earth's rotation. Now this part really got me. One clue to adaptation is to link people to the lunar day, which is a close match to Mars' day. Experiments show that people put into isolation, where they have no contact with the sun, drift towards a 25-hour day, linked to the lunar position over a particular location day by day. Now that's the end of the article, and that part really got me thinking. If you didn't catch that, it's basically Mars' day is 25 hours. And the moon's orbit is 25 hours approximately. Put into isolation, humans tend to move towards a 25-hour day. Now that doesn't prove to me anything or really confirm. In fact, it confuses the hell out of me. What it shows is that we are more closely tied to the rotation of the moon than of the days and the sun. And if this is true, it makes a lot of sense, really. The effect that the moon has on our bodies is strong. It pulls the tides, and it pulls our bodies and the fluids in our bodies as well as the magnetic aspect of it. And we all have, a magnetic center in our brain. So these differences in this day rotation, this 25-hour thing, it got me thinking of two different possibilities. Of course, one would be the obvious, that we're tied to the moon closer than we are tied to the Earth, or tied to the sun, sorry. Not that we need the moon more, but that we're closer to it, we're more affected by its gravity on a more inconsistent basis, as the sun is more of a consistent thing. I don't know. This is all speculation on my part, but I could see how people could lead to think that this means that since people lean towards the 25-hour day, that perhaps we were ancestors that came from Mars. Our ancestors were able to travel to Earth millions of years ago, and that we're still stuck on that cycle. That's not likely to be to me. And in fact, if that were true, perhaps millions of years ago the Mars cycles was different. So, in a nutshell here, to try to consolidate all this, the history of the Earth, the history of people, and the history of days is iffy. Now they can do dating on rings of coral that are millions of years old, just like they do on tree rings. And they've found that by counting the days, they can find the days in a year, which is a very helpful thing. So they found that dating some of these coral rings, they found some of them to have around, I think it was around 400 days, something like that. So maybe 2.5 billion ago, perhaps the Earth was, or I think it was. Now I can't remember the actual date. Sorry, I'm not good with the historical math here, but that at one time there were more days in a year, which could show that perhaps the Earth spun faster, and that it's gradually slowing due to the moon. So all of this stuff is, fascinating, but what do you do with it? And that's really my point here, is that we don't know what to do with it. We have so many people spending so much time researching to try to understand where we come from and what type of rhythms our bodies follow and who our ancestors were. But there are a lot of there's a monkey wrench thrown in the mix, because a lot of people want to believe the Earth is 6,000 years old, and at the same time a lot of scientists have this view of the early Earth that this is the way it is, this is the way it'll always be, this is what we believe. And I'm open to all these different discoveries. If our body really does follow a 25-hour clock closer than a 24, then there's probably a reason for that. But drawing conclusions about history is difficult, and I'm just going to leave on this note. I've done a lot of research on ancient peoples as far as the different calendars they kept. Of course, we know the Mayans' calendar more accurate than ours and all that nonsense, but as far as the peoples themselves, we often trace a history of a people's back to when a particular celestial event was supposed to take place. We'll say, well, these people worshipped this particular, maybe it was an eclipse, or whatever it may have been, in our star alignment. And when we go back in history to find when that would have happened, or when this pyramid would have pointed to this star, or when this particular thing would have been aligned, we're basing that on the fact that there's a consistent earth change. See, one earthquake 3,000 years ago could have completely changed when we think the pyramids were built, or when we think these people existed, certain people. More research to do on all of this for all of us, but I never take anything verbatim, and I don't believe all these historians telling us exactly when humans existed and did what, nor do I believe all the alternate media trying to tell us that they know when these Egyptian kings did what and why. We all have to take it with a grain of salt and just be aware. And it takes people doing their own research on this stuff. It's not that hard to Google things. It doesn't mean that what you find is going to be true. But if you really want to know about something, you have to look at it from all the sides. Meaning you have to look at it as a skeptic, and you have to look at it as a supporter, and you have to look at it neutrally, and try to gauge exactly how people are going to interpret this according to where they fit in that scale. So it's a lot more difficult not to draw conclusions, but for me it's been the healthiest way. So take care, everybody, and hope you're all having a great day.